The close fire support plan for naval gunfire called for the following. Howe minus 60 until about Howe minus 30, Fire Support Unit 8 was to deliver heavy caliber enfilade fire on areas in the vicinity of beaches red, green, blue, and yellow. Fire Support Units 1, 2, and 3 were to deliver counter-battery fire during this period. After LCIGs in blue and yellow boat lanes passed the line of fire support ships, fire was to be modified on scheduled targets. This was to ensure safety to LCIGs and boatways. From Howe hour to Howe hour plus 30, one heavy cruiser and 2 destroyers were to leave assigned stations, clear boat lane area, and take positions to deliver scheduled fires. One light cruiser was to remain in position and prepare to fire on a Fetna point on order. Other ships were to fire as per schedule. The gunboat support group made up of LCIGs were to form and proceed from the line of departure in advance of landing waves. Upon reaching line of fire support ships, this support group was to open fire on beach areas with all 40mm guns. LCIGs in red and green boat lanes were to remain at line of close fire support ships and continue firing 40mm guns as long as safety to landing craft permitted. It emphatically was stressed that rockets were not to be fired by the LCIGs in these lanes. LCIGs of blue and yellow boat lanes were to fire ranging rockets when 1,200 yards from shore, and were to fire rocket salvos when effective range was reached. They were to remain approximately 1,000 yards offshore and continue rocket and 40mm fire on beaches as long as safety to landing craft permitted. After the last assault wave passed the line of LCIGs, the boat lane area was to be cleared and fire continued along the southern flank of Beach Yellow. Aircraft of Task Forces 58, 53, and 52 were to provide support for the capture of Saipan. On Dog minus 2 day, fighter sweeps on airfields of Saipan and Tinian for the purpose of destroying enemy aircraft. There also was to be protection for minesweepers and other missions as ordered. The maintenance of smokers for the purpose of laying smoke between minesweepers and enemy guns. And finally, combat air patrol as well as anti-submarine patrol. The missions for Dog minus 1 were as follows. The destruction of inland, coast defense, and dual-purpose guns on Saipan and Tinian. The destruction of anti-aircraft guns on Saipan and Tinian. The firing of sugarcane fields not already burned in this area. The destruction of buildings around Aslito Airport. And the destruction of communications and transportation facilities on the west coast of Saipan. In addition, there were to be continued fighter sweeps on Saipan and Tinian, combat air and anti-submarine patrols, a daytime coverage for maintenance of coordination of air activities, call strikes, coverage for demolition units operating off the western beaches of Saipan, and a photographic plane for the purpose of taking vertical photographs. On Dog Day, the following air support was to be furnished. Combat air and anti-submarine patrols, air coordinator, air observers, photographic planes, artillery spotters, smokers, fighter sweeps, heavy landing strike. In the event weather prevented execution of this mission by naval aircraft, naval gunfire was to be prepared to conduct fire on air objectives during this period. Call strikes and strike aircraft. In this latter instance, the following missions were to be carried out. Counter-battery fire against inland guns firing from Saipan and Tinian, and the destruction of those guns and installations that cannot be seen from our ships. The destruction of mobile artillery pieces with special emphasis on those on the slopes overlooking the landing areas of Saipan. The destruction of enemy personnel and vehicles moving either to or from the landing beaches and in the vicinity of the sugarcane fields and hills. And the dislocation of communications by bombardment of important road junctions.
Instructions for aircraft supporting attack on Saipan emphatically stressed that under no circumstances were pilots to fly through high-angle gunnery curtains and that special precautions had to be taken to avoid flying through fire from mortars, rockets, and field artillery. Air observers were instructed to report immediately to commander support aircraft any change in front lines, or to report any change, if such were the case, hourly on the hour. Instructions for marking front lines were to be observed scrupulously. Failure of troops to mark front lines on request was to be reported to commander support aircraft.
The movement of assault and garrison elements to Saipan from the Hawaiian area and the South Pacific was echeloned. The first elements departed from the Hawaiian area on 26 May 1944. By 31 May, the majority of the reserve troops departed Pearl Harbor. During this period of movement by the assault forces, preparatory bombardment of the target areas had begun. On 3 June, aircraft of the Southwest Pacific Forces began the bombardment of Palau Islands. And from the 9th until the target date, these islands and those in the Western Carolines were harassed daily by aircraft.